Hello, everyone. Welcome to the ninth session of data visualization in the Data Science Mentor cohort. The Data Science Mentor cohort is an accelerated learning cohort for folks that are learning data science from scratch. And we are doing a step-by-step understanding of data science concepts and tools from Python to numerical Python to pandas for data analysis, to Matplotlib for data visualization. And what we do for every session is basically look for a way to teach really fundamental stuff. Right. My name is Pablo. I am founder, convener, and host of the Data Science Mentorship cohort. And today, we're having a live session, and today's live session is talking about Colorbars, right? And this session, if you're here for the first time, you'll see that it's basically for data visualization, and you can see it's the ninth session in the notebook here. Now, what that means is, if it's your first time, that means there are 8 other sessions you have not had. You must sign up for the Data Science Mentor program for you to have access to these resources. Some of our sessions, we often try to make them live stream them, just for folks to understand that we're available. So if this is one of those sessions that we have a live stream, so this is what the Data Science Mentor program looks like. Right, so today we are going at the data visualization aspect, which is called Colorbars, right? So the question is, we're going to talk about Colorbars and just ask why are Colorbars so important in Matplotlib, right? And so we'll do a walkthrough of what Colorbars are, just a simple intro session, and then we'll talk about why Colorbars are important or why we customize Colorbars, and then go on to just show a very simple boilerplate code on what Colorbars are about. Maybe in the following session, we are now going to, talk about Colorbars in an intense way, but really, simple fashion, right? And so that's what we have for today. So please, if you're in the session, please feel free to raise your hand. You can just simply raise your hand like this. If you want to ask a question, if you're in the live session, if this is streamed live, if this is one of the sessions we open up to the public, please drop a question in the comment section, right? And if you're watching the recorded session, then that means you are registered, you're part of our community, and so you can drop your questions in the Telegram channel, right? Okay, so first things first is, what are Colorbars, right? So we're going to walk through this. Let me make this a lot bigger. So what are Colorbars? Now, Colorbars are essentially for interpreting color encoded visualizations. Yep. So I think Colorbars are, I'll just say they are essential for interpreting color encoded data visualization. Right. So now the interesting thing about Colorbars is a lot of visualizations using Python, or you can see we have like scatter plots or histograms or heat maps or contour plots and stuff like that. And if you, by customizing the color, by customizing the colors or the color bars, we improve a lot of things. So another thing is where we talk about is we will almost always customize color bars. And why will we customize color bars? We customize color bars to improve clarity. We customize color bars to highlight key insights. We customize color bars to ensure accurate data communication. So ensure accurate data communication. Right. So these are why color bars are customized. Now it's not why, right? It's because customizing them improves these things, but we're going to talk about why customizing them, right? So this is the second thing I'm going to do, and then right after that, we'll just talk about the intuition, and then we'll just talk about really basic customization of color bars, and then you see how what that does typically. And then maybe in our next session, we would now we'll now talk about a few other things that you can use to make your color bars come out, right? There are other things you can use. Yeah, like there's like plots, like objects for plotting or for seeing images of what the color bars look like. Right. Again, like I mentioned, they're really interesting if you really want to, bring different mix of colors. Maybe you want a category for that you want to express maybe sequential visualization of sequences or elements that are in sequences or stuff like that. Or you want to create something like show that there's divergence in your data, right? Or you just put a mix of color, maybe for qualitative insight, right? And there's so much opportunities. As a matter of fact, Matplotlib has like a color class where you can use it to play around with different color palettes, right? So all these things are typically important in the grand scheme of visualization, and then you can now use it. I think in the next session I'll try as much as possible to now go use a certain data set and then do a certain visualization of and see how you can use color bars to do awesome stuff, right? Or customizing color bars to do really awesome stuff. So yeah, so let's get to the next part of what we're looking at. So the question is, why customize color bars? So I'm going to put this here. Why customize color bars? Now, one thing we want to customize color bars for is we need to enhance readability, right? So this is one here, one to enhance readability. Right. Some default colors may not suit your data, right? So sometimes maybe you want to show, you have data and you want to express data that is hot. Maybe the temperature is high, so you need to enhance readability. And if you don't enhance readability, you typically don't want to. You don't want your data to be misleading. There's something called data ink ratio. Right? We're not going to go into that, but it's important to work with this. The principle of data ink ratio, though not within the scope of what we're doing, sometimes it's reflected in the Matplotlib library. So yeah. Another thing we want to do is we want to highlight we want to highlight critical data ranges. So we want to highlight critical data ranges. Now, it's very important, right, to emphasize thresholds. So it's important to emphasize threshold when you're looking at data. Like, are there values that are greater than 100, and use a certain number, a certain color code to, to further the insight. Do you want to you want to talk about discrete data, right? Maybe stuff like low, medium, high risk stuff, and you want to maybe use discrete color bars to enhance stuff. There's a stuff like discrete color bars. So again, 3, you want to improve accessibility. So accessibility is such an important aspect of stuff, right? Now, some folks, right, especially individuals, some people might be colorblind, some people have different color levels. So you want to avoid maybe colorblind unfriendly palettes. So there are certain palettes that folks who are colorblind may not be able to work with. For instance, red and green. You typically want to use something that has universal readability. So those things are really important, and also you want to add labels to explain what your colors represent. These things are really important when we are doing data visualization. Then finally, we're going to talk about domain conventions, right? Because when you customize, you are trying to align with domain conventions. Now, when we say domain conventions, what does that mean? What color does best represent science? What color best represents agriculture? What color best represents finance, right? So in some of these fields, you typically want to understand color mappings that are within there. Do they have standards? Do they have standards that are suitable for them? So these are stuff that are really important. Excuse me. Right. So this really important. And one last thing before we check out, we do we do something basic, right? So in data science and data analysis, it is important to use color bars, right? Color bars are intuitive for data science and data analysis because they're typically like translators of raw data and visual patterns. So take this from me, right? It's really important for it. So let's just jump into a Python code example. And for this first session, for this session that we're going to be working on in terms of color bars, just so we can look at what is pretty simple about it. So here, let's just have an example. Now, every time I start with an example, I pretend like this is the first time I am typically writing the code. And if you have access to the code in the Google Drive, you will notice that they are comprehensive, but we just add from the last session we just keep improving on the code that we have in the Jupyter notebooks. So to this end, I'm going to import Matplotlib .pyplots. Right, as PLT. So we're giving it an alias, right? I'm also going to import numpy as NP, right? So because we're going to do some number generation, right? Okay, and I made a mistake there. Matplotlib, yes. Now, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to generate data. So I'm going to generate a 10 by 10 matrix, right? And then we are going to visualize what this 10 by 10 matrix looks like. So now we're going to have data. Now that data, that is where this is where NumPy comes in. That's where it becomes important. So we can generate numbers with it. So I'm going to say mp.random.rand. So if I check this out, random values in a given shape. So I'm just going to throw in random values, right? So what am I going to do? I'm just going to say 10. Now, again, when I say random values, you see, you're just here. I'll say 10 by 10 is what it is. So, and I run this. So this is definitely going to be, it's a NumPy array. So which means if I say data, I can basically get this, just use like the first 7, and you can see what we have here, right? Okay, that was plenty. Let's say 2. So let's just have the first 2. So you can see that we have like a random matrix, a 10 by 10 matrix. So this is 10 rows, 10 rows and 10 columns. So you can see it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the same thing on the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So that's like the first 10 columns. And of course, we just checked out 2 rows here, right? So we have 1 and 2. Now we are now going to do stuff. I'm going to, if I come over here and I write Colorbars. All right, Colorbars. Then I'll write Colorbars. Just write Matplotlib. So I'm definitely going to get a search. You see what I'm talking about. You're going to see. So choosing Colorbars and Matplotlib, right? So you can see here, Matplotlib, this documentation is unstable. Okay, switch to a stable one. Thank you. Okay, so let's ignore that. Now, so this Matplotlib has number of built-in, Matplotlib maps. And so you can choose different color maps. You can see that there are color maps here. And I like to show this just so we know, so we can put some context to what we're looking at. So the next thing I'm going to do is I am going to, now at this point, remember that if you had taken our earliest, if you had looked at our earliest, maybe in our first session on introduction to Matplotlib and the data visualization with Matplotlib, we mentioned that there are 2 ways you can visualize. You can use Matplotlib objects. There's the object-oriented version, and there's the MATLAB style. And with the MATLAB style, we just simply use PLT to do stuff. So that's what we're going to be using. And I like to mention that a lot of the time, right? So that's pretty simple way we're going to use this. And I say that because I think it's pretty important for us to have that, drilled down. Now, the first thing I'm going to say PLT. So now you see, I'm not going to introduce a figure. I'm not going to say, we're going to have a figure. So if there's a different change to it, I could just typically, introduce maybe size and all, or just find a way to introduce size to it. But so plt.imshow. So with plt.imshow, what we're going to do is we're going to display data as an image, i.e. on a 2D regular like raster, sort of like where we're going to visualize it. So here I have data, which is basically what we have over here. And next I have CMap. Now, again, I want us to see the part where we have CMap, which is basically color map, right? And with CMap, I am going to now say, now over here, you can see this guy. I'm going to use this color map, Viridis. I hope I pronounced it correctly. Viridis. That's what I have here. Next, I am going to now call on this. I'm going to call on plt.colorbar. Again, which is typically it adds a color bar to a plot. So we're calling it so that we can have that here. Then we are now going to, now we have an object. So this we have now typically now thrown an object inside here. Now we have an object, so we can now say C bar dot set underscore label. So we will now call this value intensity. Then we now have plt.title. So this gives us a title. So we're going to call this color bar customization. So color bar customization. Then we'll typically see what we have going on by saying plt.show, so that we render. Look at that. There's a lot in here, but it's small. Oh, let me try something. So let's have plt.figure. So plt.figure is typically we'll create a figure or we'll activate an existing figure, right? And when we do that, we can put a fig size. You see this fig size guy over here? If you look over here, is by default, it's just going to be like figure.fig size. So we'll put a float. We can either put floats, and then we'll have width and height in inches. So let me just put this over here. So I'll say fig size, and I'll put a float, and let me see 8 by 6. Let me see how that works. So we can call this again, and now boom, it's big. Now it just seems to be too big. All right, so let's go back again. Maybe we can just say 6 by 4. Aha, look at that. Now you can now see that, and then we all have this. Now, just so we can talk about a few things, right? First off, we can see that our color we're dealing with is going to go through all these numbers we have here, which are the elements that we created here, and we're going to start off here. You can see the darker the color over here, and it just keeps going to this place, just as you saw it over here. See that? We can use plasma. If we use plasma, the same thing happens, right? So if I come over here and I make this plasma, and you can see that it changes, right? Different colors exist for it. So you can see, you can use Inferno. Look at that, you can use Inferno. So color maps. Inferno should be like fire. All right, you can see. Right. Now there are a lot of ways that you can set this up, right? Because the CMap will tell us the default kind of color we can set, and then we can typically tell you that the color intensity which we set up with the color bars. Now there are other things you can do, right? We can set the value ranges. So let's try something else. We can set value ranges for how we want this to look like. Let's call this setting value ranges. Now, I can still do another plot in here. So I can say plt.imShow. And inside, I'm going to have my data here. We're going to have CMAP. What do we want to use? Let's see, look at that. Let's see all this gradient that we have, the different things we have going on. Right, we have a lot. You can see, look at this, cool, warm. That sounds good, like seismic, Berlin. Okay, let's use cool, warm. Right, so right, and then now if we look over here, there are different parameters, right? And there's one parameter that is really interesting. See this Vmin and Vmax. So I like to show this so that we almost always think about documentation, such an important thing, right? So Vmin, when using the scalar data and no explicit of Vmin and Vmax, define the data range that the color map covers. So we want to say the data range the color map will cover. So let's say Vmin, and inside we just say maybe 0.2, right? And the Vmap, you see over here, this one stops at 0.8. Let's make Vmax will be 0.9. Vmax will be 0.9. Right? Then we can now typically say plt.colorbar, and inside we're going to put a label again. We're going to set a label, and inside we're just going to call this adjusted range. Then plt.show. Just see. Oh, come on. So let me just copy this. Like, there should be a way that this goes all through, right? Okay. Then I look at this. So you can see what we have. You can see what this color, this thing is. And if you look over here, you can see this. It just feels like 0 points. You can see it starts basically from here. We can choose to start off from 1, and we can say let's stop at 8 because it lets it look intuitive. And so it starts at 1 and then stops at 8. So you can see the different color ranges that we have. Right. So there's a lot we can work with, right? I don't know if we should talk about other stuff. I mean, what if maybe I could talk about that in the other session, but we can also understand that there are different things. We have discrete color bars if we're dealing with categories. We have divergent color bars for positive and negative values, stuff like that. We have log scaled color bars, right? So, but all these things are there, and it's ideal that I try to talk about best practices, right? Because best practices help a lot. So let's talk about best practices. Now, with best practices, one, we can choose, we can look for, it's ideal to come and check out. You can see we have, depending on what it is, having to use maybe uniform sequential color maps. Like, it's ideal because you're sort of like, if you're looking for accuracy, it is ideal to come and say, okay, these things can build up. So in different quarters, like choosing this is a thing. right? So I have read through different quarters, and I have come to that sort of like that conclusion that choosing, perceptually uniform color maps helps. So perceptually uniform color maps. So it kind of like builds on stuff, right? So choose perceptually uniform color maps, right? So the whole idea is you typically are trying to maybe work with accuracy, and that's the thing. Then two, you can label your color bars to avoid ambiguity. That's another thing. So label color maps, right? And the reason why you're doing that is you want to avoid ambiguity. Then what else? What else can we work with? You can color ranges, right? You can match color ranges to data. So you can match color ranges to data. I think that's really interesting. So here you're looking for, meaningful values. You're looking for meaningful insights. So this could, bring about meaningful insights. Well, yeah. So I mean, I think these things are ideal. And then before I wrap up, it's ideal to think about it. Think about, the real world applications are really important. If it is biology, they are there because you're typically trying to maybe express different things about maybe the human biology, and you typically want to use different color bars to do that. Climate is such an interesting thing. We talk about the say that the earth is getting warmer, and then there is data on how the earth is getting warm. So you typically want to use color bars to look at divergent colors to talk about temperature anomalies and create a map for these things. And of course, I think the usual suspect is also finance, right? Creating heat maps for different stocks, right? If the stock started early, like there's a poor, opening price, and then it's now had a fantastic, closing price. So maybe the opening price might be red, and maybe the closing price, which was fantastic, be blue. So these customizing your color bars, right? Just like we mentioned in the beginning, creates clear, actionable insights, right? So it's ideal to try this technique. In our 10th data visualization session, we're going to try to look at do some work, pick up data and then work with it, and then see how that turns out when we're trying to work with data. But I hope this provides a template for you to look at your data and think to yourself, okay, how do I create a color map that tells the story I want my audience to hear? So yeah, so that's basically what this is about. All right, guys. I mean, if you're in the session, please feel free to ask any questions. If you are watching live, feel free to drop a comment in the comment section. And if you're watching the recorded session, please feel free to drop a question in our Telegram channel. All right.